next session of Emerge is open for registration, October 29th through December 22nd. If you are interested in investigating the layers of self, but doing so in community, this is a very potent, intensive, compassionate investigation, and it's my favorite offering. Yeah, take a peek. Answering some more of the questions that you all have written in, and today a couple questions around relationships in recovery, relationships in sobriety. So one thing I want to note quickly is that everything's always changing. We know that. A relationship never stays the same, in or out of sobriety, addiction, recovery. So while we're individually shifting, a relationship can't help but change. So especially whenever something happens like, we're getting sober, we have this internal shift that sometimes we need to actively change our relationships. We need to set boundaries. We need to move closer towards some people. We need to move away from other people. That actively has to happen. But even if we don't actively change anything, because we have shifted, that shift ripples out and it will change things, for better or for worse. Some people don't like when we shift, when we grow. Some people can't really be around us until we do. But what I'm just wanting to say by that is that that's just the relational nature, is that it's always in shift and it's always moving. So, the first question is, what did you have to change your friends? And yeah. But I want to get a little bit more nuanced there, that in my case, and this is not the case for everyone, in my case, I had went down pretty deep. So my friends, my authentic friends at that point were no longer with me in terms of most of them were like, we are here when you are ready to get some support, but they couldn't any longer watch me do what I was doing, enable me to do what I was doing. Same with my family. I was at the very end of the spectrum. So the people who I was around were people who were really deep in their addiction as well. I couldn't go casually drinking with people because I wasn't a casual drinker. I was very, very intense, and I needed other people to be very intense so that it made me feel like I was normal. We're always seeking normality, seeking belonging in my drinking, seeking that this is okay, right? This is okay, right? Even though I know it's not. It just feeds the denial. So my friends who I was with at the end were not my friends. They were sick too. So it was easy for me. It always has been pretty easy for me to separate from people. I could see that they were also sick. And then my relationships would slowly repair whenever I was getting better, when I was really stepping through into my integrity, into my sobriety. Then my friends were there. So those relationships didn't change in the terms of, they didn't like leave me forever, but they needed me to be well. They needed me to be trying to be well. And I think that that's very important, that a friend should have to set boundaries with us, because they do it, it's out of love, even though it was really hard to always receive. But relationships can repair, but we do need to be really clear about which ones we don't need to repair and which are worth it, which kept us in our cycles, and then which, really cared about our health. So yes, the friendships definitely changed. Sometimes people ask me, do I still talk to people that I used to party with? Not many. A lot of people are still using and are still out there. I might get a random message sometime, or something will happen and we'll see them, and it's really interesting. It's kind of a weird thing for me to see, somebody still in the same place where we were so long ago. It's hard. Many people have died. And many people, well, not many people, but some have gotten sober. There's not a massive success rate for this thing, unfortunately. So I feel very fortunate. But people, you can make it out of it for sure. So either they're in it and I don't talk to them, they've passed, and I don't talk to them, or they have survived it. And, you know, yeah, I'm friends with some of them still. We went, you know, definitely went separate ways, but not all of them. Some of my closest friends now I knew way back when. And then the next question is, how has it impacted the way that I relate with people, especially kind of around like social anxiety and stuff? The way that I relate with people. Well, I used to only relate with people in party environments. I was never not sober. I mean, I was never not drinking. So I had a really deep social anxiety, and I didn't know it. I started drinking whenever I was around 13, and I just like, something wasn't right. Drinking made it better. Like, I was anxious and I didn't know I was anxious because I didn't know what that word meant. Drinking made everything better. And so I only connected with people through drugs and alcohol, through party environments. So it was hard in the beginning to know like what to do with my hands, to know how to speak to people, to know how to like, you know, be in a room. Like, it was weird. So in the beginning, it was awkward because I didn't know what I was doing. You know, if you've been in an addiction for a really long time, sobriety is going to be freaking awkward, and that's okay. And other people are awkward too, because hopefully you're in a recovery community. Hopefully you're trying to do this not alone. And you just practice showing up as you are. And that's one of the biggest practices, is just practice showing up as you are in all of the awkwardness, because we've been wearing costumes for a really long time. We've been wearing armor and costumes in the forms of drugs and alcohol and who we think it makes us and the identities in which we wear. But to get really honest with ourselves and to show up with that honesty, it creates different relationships. It creates deeper, thicker, richer relationships, because they really can't be true if they're such on shifting sand. So the way that I relate to people now is, I feel it's not as static. It's not as surface. Like, my friends, one thing I used to call, oh, all my friends, she's my friend, he's my friend, she's my friend. Like, I had so many friends. We were really like drinking buddies, and I knew everyone, and I liked knowing everyone. And there was something about like knowing everyone that made me feel this sense of belonging. But I didn't really know these people. There was the core that I did, but it was just interesting. Like, I didn't really know these people. And today I have a much smaller group of friends, and I want to nurture my relationships. And I don't only want my relationships to be really wide, but I would like them to be deep. And it's a challenge in many ways due to me. You know, I travel a lot. I'm in lots of different places. That's something I've been working on consciously lately, is to, you know, really deepen my relationships because of how much I value them and not having them for so long. So they might look different. The amount of them may look different. It will change. And you know what? The social anxiety thing as well, I still get anxious sometimes. And I learn when that happens. I can recognize patterns of when that normally occurs. In certain situations, I have a tendency to be more anxious. There's certain situations that I like to go with a friend or prefer to go with a group of friends. Yeah. I've learned myself a lot more and how to work with my anxiety. It hasn't like completely eradicated, but it's so manageable. Addiction was not manageable. So I'm good. I'm managing it. All right. And the other question is around boundaries. And I have a whole talk coming out on this, but just a little bit here that I'll say around boundaries and sobriety is that, you know, the first thing that you have to do is you have to protect your sobriety. Now, I used to relapse all the time, but I would relapse because of the softest boundaries you've ever seen. There's this meme that's so funny, and it's like, it's a playground with a chain link fence, but only the gate to the whole fence is there, and the whole gate is gone. Only the gate door. Wait, the whole fence is gone and only the door is there. And it says, my first attempt at setting boundaries. So there's actually no boundary there. There's just one little door. And that's what it was like. just so, you know, someone's like, oh, would you like a drink? I'd be like, okay. Like not being able to be like, no, you know, I don't drink. Just even saying that for the first time, I remember how terrifying it was just coming out of my mouth. Like I was like, bleh, and did this massive overshare, and it was so awkward. And then it got easier to be able to say, no, I don't drink. No, thank you. I'll have a sparkling water. No, thank you. Kombucha? No, you know, I know we're not just talking about how to say no, but just how the ability to set boundaries is a practice, and it grows and it's cultivated, and it's challenging, but it's necessary. And the biggest thing, the most important thing is your recovery. The most important thing is how to protect yourself. So when we think about, there's certain people that like we know are going to trigger us, and that can be hard sometimes, because sometimes they're the people that we love the most, or it could be our family, it could be our partners, it could be like, God, there's some really hairy situations that we are in sometimes that it can't just be like, no, never talk to them again. So there's some real hard stuff that goes on. So what do you do? How do you do? And I think it's important to know that, you know, boundaries, while they need to be firm, they don't need to be forever. In some cases, you need to firmly get sturdy-footed and get a pattern of recovery and sobriety in your bones. And then maybe you're able to open up to your aunt or somebody who kind of triggers you a little bit, because you're more secure in whatever it is that's happening. But the first thing is your recovery. So it's hard to speak of boundaries without speaking of like certain hypotheticals, because there's so many different ways. Some things need to be a hard no, like absolutely not hard no. Some things will be maybe temporary, and some things need a lot of discernment and a lot of grace and a lot of maybe not doing it right and then sorting it out along the way. It's a deep exploration. It's a vital exploration of how to set boundaries. And yeah, it's important and it's hard. I guess I'll just name those two things. It's important and it's hard. And it's possible. One other thing I'll say about boundaries is that the success of a boundary is not dependent on how well it is received. That sometimes when you set a boundary, the other person's going to have feelings about it, and they might be pissed off, and you might lose some friendships, you might lose some relationships. If you're doing what is truly needed for you and your health and your wellness, and a boundary is not received, it does not mean that it shouldn't have been set. Because it's really easy to look back and say, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I should have just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But really listen in to that. Really listen into that. It's the boundary if it needs to be there, regardless of the response. If you want to learn more about boundaries from my perspective, I have a video that on boundaries, a longer spiel about it that could be really helpful. We discuss this a lot in my Emerge program as well, which is my self-inquiry recovery program, 8-week course. You can learn more about it at the link in the bio, but we go through lots of things. It's a big deep dive. And it's really about, moving away from addiction and how do we thrive and live a wide life in recovery. It's not just about putting down the alcohol. It's like, or the drugs or whatever it is, the negative self-talk, the food. But it's like Pema Chodron says, the real work begins when we work with what remains, when we're left with what remains. The real work begins when we sift through the rubble of what remains, because there's one job that has to happen, and the behavior has to be challenged and severed. But then what do we do? That's like, whoa, okay, now what? So that's an ongoing process, and that is what Emerge is about. It's like how to really emerge into, a new life, because it's scary in the beginning, but it gets good, it gets beautiful. So, all right, I hope that this was helpful. And please, any more questions and stuff, write them in the comments. I would like to do more videos like this, so Let me know what you're wondering. Thanks.